Welcome back to another episode of the Start a Glamping Business Podcast. I am your co-host, Connor Schwab, with Sage Outdoor Advisory, and here with Nick Perslow of Glamptect and Posh. And today is actually a little bit of a special day because it's the last time the podcast will be formally known as the Start a Glamping Business Podcast. So much like a phoenix, there will be a rebirth. So, Nick, you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So today, obviously, we're doing part 2 of the 75 episode special, which is kind of the 85 episode special. We've just made it up, really, where we'll be kind of covering the 10 main lessons I've taken from interviewing dozens of glamping operators. And it will be the last episode of the Start a Glamping Business Podcast. It's quite fitting that we're doing a bit of a review. As of next week, we haven't got a name for it yet. We're trying to figure out at the minute. We may have a name for it by next week, but we'll see. But it will probably have a different name in your feed. It will be on the same feed, so you don't have to go looking for it. Don't worry. We may have a different logo. And it's just a bit of a refresh, a revamp, whatever you want to call it. Well, we will reveal all the details of what's coming with the revamp next week. But to just give it a little bit of a hint of what's coming, we are moving away from a guest focus format and more moving on to a topic a topic focus format where we're discussing specific topics, ideas and issues each week. We will have guests most weeks, but there'll be maybe more of a focus on repeat guests that we've really enjoyed having on and that we'd like to have on again. But that's all we'll say for now. But what I will request is if anyone has any specific topics within glamping, but also outside of that, short-term rentals, unique outdoor stays, whatever it may be, that they'd like us to discuss, please email me at nick@glamptect.com, and I promise we'll take a look and we'll review them and consider them. We do want to involve you as a community in this a lot more moving forward. We're revamping it on a number of levels, so we're really excited. Hopefully you'll tune in next week. We'll also be asking you to share it next week because we want to help it go off with a bang. But for now, I think we'll just crack on with today's episode, which, as we said, is part 2 of the 75 episode special, where we're going over the 10 main learnings I've had since starting the podcast. And I think we did 1 to 6 last week. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, then do go back and listen to it. But just to summarize, those lessons were: 1, it's going to be hard; 2, the results can be incredible; 3, there's no one correct model; 4, don't neglect the boring stuff; 5, housing for seasonal workers; and 6, community outreach is vital. So we're going to go from 7 to 10 today. We're going to do it like we did last week. So Connor, I'll hand back over to you and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, thrilled to be diving back into this. And we'll jump off with number 7. Accommodation isn't the limit of your revenue. Let's dive into that.
Yeah, and this one's kind of an obvious one, really. Every single guest that we've interviewed has had some kind of upsell. Whether that's the very basic one that a lot of glamping operators have is, for example, a s'mores package, and that can still be great. Don't neglect that. But there's a whole load of different upsells that you can have, add-ons that you can have, and to be honest, if you're generating 100% of your revenue from accommodation only, then you're almost certain you're doing something wrong and you're leaving money on the table. So it's a common theme, and there's been a few operators that we've had on that have had particularly interesting forms of upsells and F&B. So, some that spring to mind are Lucky Arrow Retreat. We had them on 9-12 months ago. They had a pool at their glamping site, which is unique in itself, but they sold pool passes to the general public, which I thought was kind of cool. It won't fit every experience. It won't be suitable for every operator. Obviously, you need a pool in the first place, but I thought that was quite unusual and interesting. Creekside R&R in the east coast of Canada, they were on a few weeks ago, and they have something called an escape box, which is a bit like an escape room, but contained within a box. And again, I thought that was kind of a creative idea, and it's examples of how you can mix things up with your upsells and F&B. A common add-on that a lot of operators have is actually they host events, and particularly weddings at their glamping sites. Now, that can be a lot of work, but it can obviously have a huge impact on your bottom line because there's a lot of money in the wedding industry if you do things right. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of extra work. We had Shannon Jamail on from the Retreat Ranch, again, probably 9 to 12 months ago. and she completely outsources all wedding planning. So obviously there'll be some kind of workload added when you're hosting people on your property, but she doesn't do any of the organizing or the marketing for the wedding side of the business. So we've got a clip here where she explains how she did that and how it doesn't really add too much stress to her daily life.
I feel like I'd be a total ball of stress if I was organising it. So is that the case for you, or have you kind of got it down to a good process now?
Nick, the reason why it works is because I tell people who book weddings is you have rented a space. And here are contacts for you to organize everything else. So, and I've got contacts for wedding planners and organizers. We're literally just the space, and then we'll connect you to other people. So, where I'm very hands-on and we organize from start to finish a retreat, we do not when it comes to weddings or family reunions or anything like that. Maybe down the road, I'll have someone on site that is their primary job, and somebody who's very experienced at that and then can deal with high levels of people being stressed out about it. That's just not something that I want to do right now. But yeah, so we're just a space for everything else. You just come and you're renting the space, but we have a list of partners and vendors and contacts who can come in and do some cool stuff, whether it's Western line dancing or a mobile wine bar.
So yeah, events, Connor, I know you've probably spoken to a load of operators that were planning on hosting events and weddings at sites, right?
Yeah, it's we hear of it all the time, whether it's events, predominantly weddings or corporate events, family reunions or retreats. And then also F&B and how that fits into it. But certainly, it can be a huge part of it. Anywhere from, even just 3% makes a big difference. And, sometimes we see it as high as 15, 20, 30. I think the highest I've heard of is 40%. As far as total revenue, what part of that is coming from events and F&B. There's certainly, the wedding industry is not easy. But the way I always thought about it, that was a little bit might be oversimplified, which is, there's probably 3 to 5 leading wedding planners in any given market, and really good ones who are doing a ton of business. And if you can invite those wedding planners to come stay at your site for a free night and come check it out and build a relationship with them, it's hard to imagine that, that avenue wouldn't produce some good leads, and then having them, handle a lot of the logistics. I have spoken with a few operators who've tried to do that, and they said it was a lot harder than it sounds. So I don't know, maybe it's not as simple as it is in my mind, but certainly, as Nick said, if you're just doing rooms, you're probably leaving some money on the table, and your guest experience probably isn't as good as it could be.
The little bit of insight I've had on how wedding planners work with glamping sites, these wedding planners are actually really sophisticated marketers as well. They have whole email funnels, marketing funnels that, they get a shit ton of leads and kind of whittle them down, and they're killer kind of operators. So these are people that you can learn from as partners, and you can apply some of their marketing practices to your glamping business as well. So I definitely think it's worthwhile pairing with those planners.
And if it's a local family that's getting married at the wedding and they bring out 100 to 200 guests to your property as a wedding, like you just had 100 to 200 new, hopefully local customers come experience your property. So like the chances of you capturing some of those as real customers is huge.
Yeah. And Posh Outdoors is one of our main targets, is partnering with landowners who are hosting weddings already, just because, as you say, there's a whole, the rooms will be filled at weekends without really having to lift a finger if the wedding's already taking place. So we think there's a massive potential in those partnerships. So I absolutely think anyone should at least consider hosting weddings, and there are lots of different ways to do that. As I say, you can take a hands-on approach, or you can do what Shannon at the Retreat Ranch did, and just offload it all and not have too much stress added to your daily routine. So that's weddings, events, F&B, etc. Moving on to learning number 8.
All right, the little touches can mean the most. Tell us about that, Nick.
Yeah, so when planning a guest experience or planning, your big vision for your glamping site, you might have these big ideas about what will be the game changers, what will get all the testimonials and the reviews and be the showstoppers, and that might be an outrageous view or amazingly expensive units, whatever it may be. But quite often, what I've learned is the things that really stick out the most aren't just aren't those big things. It's the little things, that maybe don't cost anything, maybe just cost a little bit, and so, they're the lasting memories. They're what people think about when they think about staying at your site. So we've got a few kind of lines from that. So the first one is a guest book, and not just any guest book. We had Mike and Ann Howard from Honey Trek on there. As a reminder, they stayed at over 80 glamping sites on their kind of extended honeymoon. So they are the best traveled glampers in the world. So they know a thing or two. And one of the things that they mentioned after all of those glamping sites is that one particular site had a really nice guest book, and they did it really well, and it kind of had a massive effect on how they felt connected to that site, connected to the previous guests, and it lived long in the memory. So I think the clip they're about to show is them not necessarily describing that specific guest book, but just describing how you can do something similar, and putting a little bit more effort into something as small as a guest book can have a big effect on how guests feel about the business.
Having a nice guest book in each room, and not just a book that says leave your name, the date you were here, and what state you drove here from, because that's boring. I want to see a couple paragraphs from the owner in the beginning of that book, like maybe a nice leather-bound book or just something with a little meat to it that feels like a journal. A couple paragraphs welcoming them to the property, maybe sharing a story, a little personal anecdote or something that they love about the property, and inspiring the guests to leave their own little journal entry about something they felt on the property, something they saw, an interaction with an animal, an interaction with another guest,
a tip memory they might want to pass along to the next guest. A tip they
might pass to the next guest. Oh, there's this secret hammock that you've got to find. It's not on the map, but it's down by this river rock.
I love the tip about, if you're incentivizing people with a journal, maybe leave a couple tips in there that aren't listed anywhere else, like the secret hammock or the best place to see sunset or something like that.
Yeah, actually, we'll go back to Honey Trek next week in some of the ideas I've got planned, where we won't spoil what next week's episode is going to be, but we will mention Honey Trek. And one of the topics that I'm going to discuss next week is leaving something behind. So, you talk about 70% of what the guest is going to get on your website. But leave a little bit behind, and leaving those little kind of golden nuggets in the guest book or dotted around the unit, they can have a huge impact. So I just thought that was a really good example of just how little things, putting a little bit more effort into certain small aspects of the guest experience, can massively improve the guest experience and set you apart from the crowd, really. Another one, again, to mention, Blackstrap Glamping in Saskatoon, Canada. Joshua and Jane, we had them on a couple of months ago. They just have a whiteboard in each of their units, and they welcome the guest personally by name on that whiteboard. Again, takes 10 seconds, costs no money, but just addressing the guest by name and maybe writing a nice little message can add a nice personal touch. And they said more often than not, the guest actually wrote back to them on their whiteboard when they left. So again, that creates that connection, adds something to the experience, costs nothing, takes no time, but adds something again.
Hi, friends. This is your host, Connor Schwab at Sage Outdoor Advisory. If you're launching an outdoor hospitality project like glamping, we can help. We offer feasibility studies and appraisals. What that means is we look at your specific market and proposed business offering and complete an in-depth analysis and financial projections to make sure that your planned business will be profitable. Getting a second opinion on your proposal and forecasted financials is critical to understand before you spend years of your time and hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is particularly important if you are looking to raise money for your project from a bank or private investors. They are going to want to see this type of in-depth analysis from an independent third-party specialist in the industry. We have completed over 250 feasibility studies and appraisals in outdoor hospitality in the U.S. in the last 4 years. So we understand what it takes to bring a project from concept to reality. If this sounds like it could be helpful to you, you can go to our website, sageoutdooradvisory.com, and you can schedule a complimentary consultation with our team. Thanks. Now back to the show. Yeah, and you want the guests to feel like they mean a lot to you. And obviously they do mean a lot to you, and you'll have hundreds or thousands of guests come through, but just showing that little bit of effort that's specifically for them. And like you said, writing their name. And I heard someone, I think it was the guy who used to work at Amagiri, or someone in really high-end hospitality. They told me that kind of the instructions from the management was just try to connect with the guests. That's like kind of your highest and first priority is just try to learn about them, where they're from, what they're in town celebrating, what they like to do, and try to like connect or do something above and beyond. Be like, oh, I think you should go to this mountain biking spot, or this is a really great spot in town for drinks, or whatever that might be. But like connecting with them on a personal level. And then you mentioned something else from the guest book that I think's good to latch on to. And I think really good hospitality is really good storytelling, the story of the property, of the land, of the area, of the entrepreneur themselves. And I think the guest book is a really great way to introduce that story literally in a book. And I know we're going to be launching a really fun and exciting episode for our first revamped podcast. Do we want to give any little sneak peek away, like our working title?
Yeah, go on then.
Our working title so far is cool shit. So you can just read into what that might be, but we wanted to start off with something fun, creative, and really get the juices flowing a little bit.
Yeah, so that episode kind of, if there was any lesson that episode can be most applied to, it is this one, the little touches that mean the most. And we're going to be talking about lots more little touches and big touches in next week's episode. So that's enough of the spoilers for now. And the last point on this that I want to make as well is these little touches, they don't have to be something tangible like a guest book. They can be recognizing or understanding where the guest needs to be at the right time. And our good friend Big Noel Dutson, who hint you might see coming on the podcast soon, again for his second appearance. He really understands this, and he has a name for the time that he wants the guest to arrive and really be present very early on in the stay. He calls it and by the way, we've cut some bloopers, but this is my third attempt at saying this, so I hope I get it right. The Glamping golden hour. There we go, we got it right. So here's Big Noel talking about his golden I've done it again. The Glamping golden hour.
And I have what I kind of have coins called like the Glamping golden hour. And this is essentially what you're paying for. Is you arrive 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're going to stay there and you're going to experience the magical evening hours come out. The sunset's going to happen, you're going to see the stars come out, and you're going to have this most amazing experience being in nature. Once 10, 11 o'clock comes around, you go to get in bed and you go to sleep. It doesn't matter if you're in a $5,000 tent, if you're in a $100 hotel, you're asleep at that point. It really doesn't matter. So to me, like what you're paying for is those few hours right there. So I kind of call it the Glamping golden hour. Now, if a guest has to come to your property and leave for 3 hours to go find food or 2 hours to go find food, sit down, eat, and then come back, guess what? They've missed those special hours. It's 8:30, 9 o'clock now. They're just going to see the stars, which is fine, but you just missed that special moment.
So well said. He's so eloquent.
And I think, again, it's a perfect example. It's nothing tangible. It's just an understanding of when the magic happens and gently guiding or building the guest experience to guide the guest towards that particular moment. And the guests won't even realize that Big Noel has set up the experience so that they're present for that Glamping golden hour. And that's even better, I think. It's when it's kind of subconscious, and he's created a beautiful experience and timed it to perfection without being intrusive or doing anything tangible or spending any money, really. So I think that's just an example of how the little touches don't have to be tangible. They don't have to be anything that you can particularly point to, but it's just taking that extra care to understand when the magic happens, where it happens, and kind of guiding the guest experience around that.
Number 9, marketing.
Yeah, I am a bit of a marketing geek. I never really shut up about it, and a lot of the episodes recently have been marketing centric, and that's for good reason. So before I go into the specifics of this, I want to kick off with a clip from Alex Burkett, who at the time ran a marketing agency. I think he's now a general manager at is it Spacious Skies Campground? I'm not sure. He's a general manager at a campground, and he used to work for, I think it was Jellystone Resorts, and he did one TikTok video which was extremely successful for the business. So we're going to kick things off here to just explain and demonstrate just how important marketing is and the value of good marketing.
Yeah, so I'll point back to one example from when I worked at my initial park doing the marketing there. We decided to launch and create a TikTok page. On TikTok, we had the ability to create a campaign and create some of these videos in place that, like I talked about earlier, hit 500,000 or 1 million views, even with just our website link in our profile on TikTok, not a direct booking link on that post or anything like that. We were able to drive almost 3,000 visits back to our website and over 700 new reservations just from one viral TikTok video that took, maybe a half hour worth of planning, shooting, editing, and putting out there. And I think that's something that we're most proud of, looking at, being able to generate, call it $75,000 of new reservations and new money coming into the business just based on one viral video.
So that was back in the glory days when I personally edited the podcast. So that tells you how long ago it was, but the principle rings true. One TikTok video generated $70,000 worth of bookings. And I think that is just a prime example of how important marketing is, not just on an ongoing basis, but you can strike gold with just one video. And so I think it's very important to put due care and attention into your marketing and think strategically about it. And the last few episodes that we've done should kind of give you some pointers on that. We definitely want to go into it in more detail with the revamped podcast. But again, a prime example of how important marketing can be.
Yeah, this deserves its own episode. Maybe we should, Oh, wait. Stay tuned.
Yeah. Another couple of guys on the marketing topic that is worth mentioning now. Nate Viets from the Content House. He must have come on about 6 months ago. He is a content creator who his company will go and visit a glamping operator or a unique stay operator and batch produce 4 or 5 months worth of content. They'll capture a load of video footage, a load of photographs, and then they'll go away, edit it all down, and then they'll post 3-4 times a week for 4 or 5 months, and then they'll go back to the site and do it again. So there are people out there who can help you with your marketing and do understand how social media algorithms are changing. I won't go into that into much detail today because I have mentioned it a few times in the last few episodes, but the one thing that I really would suggest is if you don't have a deep understanding of marketing, then speak to someone who does, because it is incredibly important. And one operator in particular who has the best understanding of marketing as a kind of owner and founder of a glamping business rather than being necessarily a marketing guy is Derry Green from Secret Garden Glamping in the UK. He was the one who went on Dragon's Den, which was the UK's equivalent of Shark Tank. And he kind of goes to the extreme end of the scale because he actively designs his units and his site around what will work on social media and get the most engagement. So he understands that if you post a reel on Instagram, like a short form video, the first half a second is the most important in determining whether the viewer will swipe up and watch another video or they'll stay and watch your video. So rather than designing his glamping unit around what would be best for the guest, which most people would do, he designed his glamping units around what would provide the best view for an Instagram reel, which would, i.e., capture the viewer's attention, get the most engagement, and get the most views and comments and all that, and generate the most growth for his business on social media. Now that's a pretty extreme end of the spectrum. Some people might prefer to prioritize the guest experience, but he truly understands social media algorithms, and it's just something to bear in mind that always have marketing in the back of your mind when you're thinking of designing your site. And we have a clip here of we often talk about Instagrammable features of your site. This is a little less extreme. You might have a feature of your site that looks good and adds to the guest experience, but is also something that people take pictures of and share it on social medias and encourage that word of mouth marketing. So here's Derry talking about how he created an Instagrammable Victorian swing.
Just to go back to what you mentioned there about designing and building the units with marketing and memories in mind, without giving away the secret sauce, could you point to maybe one small example of how you've done that?
I mean, there's loads. I'll give you two, actually. So one, dead easy one, we was shopping. There's a place called Home Sense. It's got loads of random furniture and stuff like that. We was there a month or so ago, and there was a set of metal Victorian swings, or they were meant to look like metal Victorian swings. They were £300. in green. So we bought them, brought them back here, spray painted them gold, added some flowers, and we put them at the entrance where the car park joins the site. So it's the first thing people see. And without fail, almost every guest, whether it be a guy and his wife or a group of girls or a group of friends, everyone will sit there and have the photo taken, and they will share that photo and tag us in it. Absolutely every time without fail.
I love Derry. He's the most stereotypical English bloke ever, and I love him.
I don't know what a gold Victorian swing looks like. I mean, I know the gold part. I just don't know what the Victorian part looks like.
No, I've got no idea what a Victorian swing is either. The point being, every guest stopped, took a picture with it and shared it on social media, and that's golden marketing. It's free marketing, and I've always said I think every single glamping site should have at least one Instagrammable feature that is kind of the showpiece that people take pictures of and share, because if you don't, you're missing out, and it's not like it kind of detracts from the experience. You know, the point of it being Instagrammable is it's eye-catching and people want to take a picture with it. So I think, you know, you're absolutely missing out if you don't deliberately plan out a feature like that.
All right, off to number 10. It can be incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, and this is just a nice little note to finish on, really. We talked in part 1 about how it can be incredibly financially rewarding to operate a glamping site, whether that's taking you out of the rat race and giving you an alternative source of income from a lifestyle that's much more enjoyable than the rat race, all the way to doing a Sarah Dusik and selling your business for $100 million and everything in between. But I think arguably more importantly than the financial aspect is the emotional aspect. And I was surprised when I started interviewing operators just how many had stories of how their staying at their site has either saved a guest's marriage, repaired a relationship between a father and a daughter or a mother and a daughter, and just generally had a really, really positive effect on people's lives. And obviously, owning a glamping site, you know, you're not curing cancer or anything like that. No one's going to pretend that it's like the most altruistic pursuit in the world, but it absolutely can make a difference. And it can be, you know, as I say, it can have a great effect on people's lives, but also as an operator, it can be a source of immense satisfaction, and it can be incredibly rewarding to do that and to see how you have an effect on people's lives. So I think the best clip that I can recall that sums that up is from Lex Jones, who has various Airbnbs in California, and he explained it perfectly.
We had a guest and a family come in, and they stayed for 3 or 4 nights, and it was a husband and wife and 2 kids. Everything went well. They checked out, and the husband ended up messaging me on Airbnb saying thank you, and we give a bunch of thank yous all the time, and I was like, yeah, of course, no worries. Thanks so much for staying with us. And he goes, no. I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I've been married to my wife for 20 years. I mean, I haven't been able to see her relax and enjoy a sunset for the last 10 years of our marriage. And thank you for providing the opportunity for us so that she can basically unplug and really relax. And after that, I was sold. After that, I knew this is what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be able to teach other people how to provide that experience to people.
Nick, you mentioned, we're not curing cancer, but I do think that, you know, without sounding like overly naive or bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but I mean, the why for me in being in this space is that I think both, you know, people and, you know, our greater community, particularly in the United States, is, you know, really hurting in a lot of ways, whether it be, you know, physical or mental health, and with so much stimulus in front of screens and busy schedules. And then, you know, also the environment really, really hurting through development and a lack of care. And it might sound overly optimistic, but I do think that outdoor hospitality and glamping is one of the best things for both the environment and for people. And it gives people a chance to reconnect with nature and to slow down and to just be, you know, the animals that we are, and can really have a profound effect on people, and ideally really start to foster greater environmental stewardship across the greater population. So I think it's hugely important, and some of the experiences I'm sure you've had and a lot of these guests, and I know I have, like when you get out to a really special property, it can change your month, it can change your day, it can change relationships. So I think it can't be undervalued.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better myself. And even from those kind of dramatic experiences of repairing marriages, familial relationships, whatever, all the way to just putting a smile on someone's face for half a day, like they're both equally valid. And I think anyone who is maybe going through the process of starting a glamping business and is finding it difficult and running into obstacles, yes, you might use the financial reward as a motivating factor, but also I think you should bear those clips in mind. Just examples of how it can be incredibly emotionally rewarding as well. So I think, to be honest, that's the perfect place to end it. I think it's the perfect place to end this stage of the podcast. We're really excited to revamp this, to really take it to the next level. We want to grow our listener base, but we also want to serve our existing audience who have taken us this far and who we truly appreciate. So again, please email me at nick@glamptech.com for any ideas of topics that you want us to discuss. But Connor, I think that's a beautiful place to end it.
Nick, well, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and all the time you've invested in hosting and exploring these different stories and synthesizing that down into 10 great points. So my only question is, when do I get to do one of those?
You've got to do 75 episodes yourself first.
All right. I'll start the checklist.
That'll be like a year and a half?
All right, deal. Well, thanks everyone for stopping by. And I think our next episode, we'll see you in the 2.0 revamped podcast. So cheers, everybody. And thank you, Nick.
The podcast with no name. Thank you.